The first time 8-year-old Eli Mercer smiled after his mother died, it was over a slice of warm bread. Caleb Mercer noticed it at once. For almost 2 years, his son had moved through life like a small shadow. Eli rarely spoke, never laughed, and ate only when Caleb begged him. Most nights, the boy pushed his plate away and stared at the empty chair where his mother once sat. But that morning, Eli finished 2 thick slices of brown bread covered with wild honey. Then he reached toward the plate and whispered, "Is there more?" Caleb froze beside the stove. He had not heard hunger in his son's voice since the winter fever took Margaret from them. Caleb looked at the last piece of bread on the table. It had a golden crust, a soft center, and a sweet smell that filled the cold ranch kitchen. He had bought it the day before from Grant's General Store in Pine Hollow, Montana. He wrapped the final piece in cloth, lifted Eli onto his horse, and rode toward town before the sun had fully risen. The wind cut across the open land like a knife. Frost covered the dead grass, and dark clouds gathered above the distant hills. Caleb kept one arm around Eli as their horse followed the narrow trail. Grant's General Store was already busy when they arrived. Several ranchers stood near the iron stove, warming their hands and talking about the coming storm. Caleb walked past them without speaking. His boots struck the wooden floor as he crossed the store. He placed the wrapped bread on the counter. "Who made this bread?" he asked. The room became quiet. Mr. Grant looked up from his account book. He was a thin man with silver hair and round glasses. His eyes moved from Caleb to Eli, who stood close to his father's coat. "Is something wrong with it?" Mr. Grant asked. "No." Caleb opened the cloth. "My boy ate nearly the whole loaf." Mr. Grant waited. Caleb lowered his voice. "He has barely eaten since his mother died. Last night he asked for more. This morning he smiled." The old shopkeeper's face softened. Caleb pushed the bread closer. "I need to know who baked it." Mr. Grant removed his glasses and cleaned them with his sleeve. "A young woman brings 6 loaves every Monday and Thursday," he said. "She arrives before sunrise and leaves before most people are awake." "What is her name?" "She told me it was Nora." "Nora what?" Mr. Grant shook his head. "She never said." "Where does she live?" "That is harder to answer." Caleb's jaw tightened. Mr. Grant glanced toward the men beside the stove. "Some say she lives beyond Cedar Wash, others say she stays near the old mining trail. She comes on a gray mule with a red blanket under the saddle." One of the ranchers laughed. "You mean the dirt house woman?" Caleb turned toward him. The man's smile disappeared. "What did you call her?" Caleb asked. The rancher cleared his throat. "Folks say she lives inside a hill, a dugout somewhere near the cottonwood breaks. Nobody knows why a young woman would hide out there alone." Caleb wrapped the bread again. "Thank you." He bought flour, salt, coffee, and a small jar of honey. Then he led Eli outside. Mr. Grant followed him to the porch. "You are not planning to search for her today, are you?" "I am." "A storm is coming." Caleb looked at his son. Eli was holding the small piece of bread with both hands. "I have already waited too long to bring my boy back," Caleb said. They rode west from Pine Hollow. The trail disappeared beneath tall brown grass. The land became rougher with every mile. Deep cuts opened between the hills, and bare cottonwood trees stood beside frozen streams. Caleb stopped at 3 homesteads and asked about the woman who baked bread. The first family knew nothing. The second had seen a gray mule near Cedar Wash. At the third place, an old trapper named Amos Bell pointed toward a line of dark hills. "Look for smoke where no chimney should be," Amos said. "She keeps to herself, do not frighten her." Caleb thanked him and rode on. By late afternoon, the sky had turned gray. Snow began to fall in small, hard pieces. Eli shivered beneath a buffalo robe. "We can go home," Caleb told him. "We can search again after the storm." Eli looked up. "Bread lady," he whispered. Caleb felt something break inside his chest. "All right," he said, "we will find her." They crossed Cedar Wash before the water rose. On the far side, the trail narrowed between high banks of dirt and stone. Caleb almost missed the smoke. It was a thin white line rising from the side of a hill. He guided the horse closer. A wooden door stood beneath a roof of grass and earth. A short iron pipe pushed through the hill above it. Beside the doorway sat a neat pile of chopped wood, several clay pots, and an empty bread basket. It was a dugout, a home hidden inside the earth. Caleb helped Eli down from the horse. The smell reached them before they reached the door. Fresh bread, warm butter, burning cedar. Eli took a step forward. Caleb knocked. There was movement inside. Then silence. Caleb knocked again. "My name is Caleb Mercer," he called. "I came from Pine Hollow. I have my son with me." The door opened only a few inches. A young woman looked through the space. She had dark red hair tied behind her neck. Flour marked one cheek. Her blue eyes were careful and sharp. "What do you want?" she asked. Caleb held out the final piece of bread. "Did you make this?" The woman looked at it. "Yes. My son stopped eating after his mother died." Her eyes moved toward Eli. "He ate your bread," Caleb continued. "For the first time in 2 years, he asked for more." The woman opened the door wider. She looked no older than 26. She wore a faded brown dress beneath a flour-covered apron. One hand remained behind her back. Caleb guessed she was holding a knife. "My name is Nora Hale," she said. "I am not here to cause trouble." Men often say that before they do. Caleb understood the fear in her voice. He stepped back from the doorway. "I brought flour, salt, coffee, and honey. I hoped you might sell me a few loaves." Nora looked at the supplies tied behind his saddle. Then she looked at Eli again. The boy stood in the snow, staring past her into the warm dugout. Nora's expression changed. "Bring him inside," she said. "His lips are turning blue." The room was small, but it was warmer than Caleb's ranch house had felt in years. White cloth-covered shelves carved into the dirt walls. A bright quilt rested on a narrow bed. A little iron stove glowed in the corner. 6 fresh loaves sat beneath a clean towel on a wooden table. Eli stared at them. Nora sliced a piece from the nearest loaf and covered it with butter and honey. She placed it in front of him. Eli ate slowly. Nora sat across from him and waited. When he finished, she gave him another piece without asking. Caleb watched his son's shoulders relax. "Why do you live out here alone?" he asked. Nora's face became guarded again. "Because nobody owns my silence here." Caleb did not understand, but he did not press her. The wind struck the door with sudden force. Nora looked toward the small window. "You cannot ride back tonight," she said. "I have crossed worse weather. Not through Cedar Wash it floods when the snow turns to rain. You would be carrying your son into a grave." Thunder rolled beyond the hills. Caleb moved toward the door. "I need to bring the horse under shelter." "There is a stone ledge behind the hill," Nora said. "Tie him there." Caleb stepped outside. The snow had changed to freezing rain. The wind bent the cottonwood trees and sent dirt spinning through the air. He led the horse around the hill and secured it beneath the ledge. As he turned back, he saw movement on the ridge. 3 riders stood against the dark sky. They were watching the dugout. One of them lifted an arm and pointed directly at Nora's door. Then all 3 began riding down the hill. Caleb reached the dugout door before the riders reached the bottom of the ridge. "Stay inside," he told Nora. She stood beside the table with one hand on Eli's shoulder. Her other hand still held the small kitchen knife Caleb had guessed she carried earlier. "Who are they?" he asked. Nora's face lost its color. "The man in front is Everett Crowley." Caleb looked through the narrow window. The lead rider wore a black coat and a flat-brimmed hat. The 2 men behind him carried rifles across their saddles. "What does he want?" "My land." Caleb turned toward her. "You own this place?" I filed a claim last spring. There is a spring under this hill. Crowley wants the water for his cattle. The sound of hooves grew louder. Nora placed the knife on the table and lifted a small tin box from beneath the bed. She opened it and removed several folded papers. "These prove I filed the claim," she said, "but Crowley says the papers mean nothing because I am alone." Caleb looked at the fear she was trying to hide. "Keep the papers safe." "What are you going to do?" "Talk to him." Caleb stepped outside and closed the door behind him. The freezing rain struck his face. The three riders stopped several yards from the dugout. Everett Crowley looked about 40 years old. His black beard was neatly trimmed, and his coat was too fine for a man riding through bad weather. His eyes were cold and watchful. "Well," Crowley said, "Caleb Mercer." Caleb knew the name. Crowley owned a large cattle spread south of Pine Hollow. People said he gained land by buying poor ranchers' debts and forcing families from their homes. "I did not expect to find you out here," Crowley continued. "I came to buy bread." Crowley smiled. "That woman has caused more trouble than her bread is worth." Caleb did not move. "She says this land belongs to her." "She says many things. She has papers." "Papers can be wrong." Crowley leaned forward in his saddle. "She built this hole on land I purchased from the railway. I gave her enough time to leave. She refused." Nora opened the door and stepped beside Caleb. "I filed my claim before you bought anything," she said. Crowley's smile disappeared. "You should have stayed inside. This is my home. For now." Caleb stepped between them. "You will not threaten her while her door is open to my son." Crowley looked toward the window. Eli's pale face could be seen behind the glass. "This is not your fight, Mercer. It became my fight when you rode here with armed men." The two hired riders shifted in their saddles. Crowley raised one gloved hand, and they remained still. "You have your own ranch to worry about," Crowley said. "Your north fence is broken, your herd is smaller than it was 2 years ago, and the bank note comes due in spring." Caleb felt anger rise inside him. Crowley knew too much. "You have been asking about me. I ask about every ranch that may soon become available." Caleb's hands closed into fists. Crowley smiled again. "Take your boy home. Leave this woman to settle her own trouble. She already settled it when she filed her claim. The land clerk will decide that. Then let him decide." Crowley looked at Nora. "You have until the end of the week. After that, I will return with the sheriff." He turned his horse and rode away. The two hired men followed him into the rain. Caleb watched until they disappeared behind the ridge. Nora stepped back inside without speaking. Her hands shook as she returned the papers to the tin box. "You should leave before he comes back," she said. "I cannot cross Cedar Wash tonight." "I mean tomorrow." Caleb studied her face. "You think I am afraid of Crowley. I think you have a son and a ranch. You should not risk either for a woman you met an hour ago." Eli sat near the stove, holding the last piece of bread. He looked from Nora to his father. Caleb lowered his voice. "You fed my boy when nothing else could reach him. I will not forget that." Nora looked down. "Bread is not worth losing your home." "No, but doing what is right may be." The storm lasted through the night. Caleb slept on the floor near the door while Eli rested beneath Nora's quilt. Nora sat beside the stove and repaired a tear in Eli's coat. At first, she and Caleb said little. Then Caleb told her about Margaret. She had been gentle, cheerful, and stronger than anyone knew. She had become sick during a bitter winter and died before the doctor could reach the ranch. "I kept thinking I could fix things by working harder," Caleb said. "I repaired fences, I counted cattle, I cleaned the barn twice in 1 week, but the house stayed empty." Nora tied off the thread. "Grief does not care how hard a man works." Caleb looked at her. "You speak like you know." Nora stared into the fire. "My mother died when I was 16. My father changed after that. He became angry at everything, at the weather, at the crops, and mostly at me. She folded Eli's coat carefully. He promised me to a man named Vernon Price. Vernon owned a mill in Missouri. He was twice my age and cruel to every worker he had. You ran away. The night before the wedding. Nora looked around the small room. I took my mother's bread starter and $20 she had hidden in her Bible. I came west and worked in a boarding house. Then I saved enough to file this claim. Caleb understood why she guarded the dugout like a fortress. This place is more than land to you. It is the first thing that ever belonged to me. Early the next morning, the rain stopped. Cedar Wash had become a wide stream of mud and fast water. Caleb knew they could not ride across safely. By noon, Eli had begun helping Nora shape small rolls. She gave him a piece of dough and showed him how to press it flat. What should we make? She asked. Eli thought for a moment. A horse. Nora smiled. Caleb stood near the stove and watched them. Eli had spoken louder than a whisper. Nora shaped 4 legs while Eli made the head. The dough horse looked crooked and heavy, but Eli laughed when it fell on its side. The sound filled the dugout. Caleb turned toward the window so they would not see the tears in his eyes. That evening, the water began to fall. Caleb stepped outside to inspect the trail. Nora followed him. You can leave in the morning, she said. You are coming with us. Her eyes narrowed. No. Crowley will return. This is my home, and I am not asking you to abandon it forever. Caleb pointed toward the dark ridge. You can stay at my ranch until we prove your claim. Pine Hollow has a land office. Mr. Grant knows the clerk. We can get a certified copy of your filing. Nora folded her arms. I will not become your servant. I did not ask you to. People will talk. People already talk. She looked toward the dugout. My stove, my supplies, and my bread starter are here. We will take them. You cannot move a whole life in one morning. Caleb looked through the window at Eli, who sat near the table waiting for another roll. Maybe not, he said, but we can save it. Nora remained silent for a long time. What would you expect from me at your ranch? Nothing you do not freely choose. And where would I sleep? There is a room upstairs with a lock. You will have the only key. She studied him as if searching for hidden danger. Caleb did not look away. At the end of the week, Nora said, I return here. If your claim is safe, I will bring you back myself. And if it is not, then we fight Crowley through the court. Nora gave a weak laugh. Men like him own courts. Not every judge is for sale. You sound certain. I am certain that he expects you to stand alone. Caleb opened the door. You do not have to. The next morning, they loaded Nora's most important things onto Caleb's horse and an old handcart she kept beside the hill. She packed her papers, clothes, blankets, flour, and the small jar that held her bread starter. She wrapped the jar in wool and held it against her chest as if it were a child. Before leaving, she stood at the dugout door. Caleb saw tears in her eyes. We will come back, he said. Nora locked the door. I hope you are right. They reached the Mercer ranch near sunset. The house stood on a rise above a frozen valley. It was large, strong, and dark. No smoke rose from the chimney. The porch boards groaned in the wind. Nora stepped inside and looked around. Dust covered the furniture. Cold ashes filled the hearth. A cracked plate sat on the kitchen table beside a dead bunch of flowers. This house has been sleeping, she said. Caleb set down the supplies. It has felt more like it was dying. Nora removed her coat. She lit the stove, swept the kitchen floor, and mixed a small bowl of dough before Caleb could stop her. By nightfall, the house smelled of warm bread. Eli sat at the table with flour on his nose. Caleb stood in the doorway and listened as Nora taught the boy to shape the first letter of his name. Eli said. That is right, Nora told him. He looked toward his father and smiled. For the first time since Margaret's death, Caleb felt the ranch breathe again. Then someone pounded on the front door. Caleb opened it. Mr. Grant stood on the porch, breathing hard. His horse waited behind him, covered in foam. "What happened?" Caleb asked. The shopkeeper looked at Nora. "Crowley went to the land office this afternoon," he said. "Your claim papers are missing." Nora gripped the back of a chair. Mr. Grant removed a folded notice from his coat. "And the sheriff says Crowley is coming tomorrow morning to remove you from the dugout." Caleb took the notice. At the bottom of the page was another line. Crowley had also filed a claim against the Mercer ranch for an unpaid debt. He was not coming only for Nora's home. He was coming for Caleb's too. Caleb read the notice twice, but the words did not change. Everett Crowley claimed that Caleb had failed to pay a private loan made to Margaret's father 6 years earlier. The paper said the Mercer ranch had been used as security. Caleb looked at Mr. Grant. "I have never seen this debt." "Neither have I," Mr. Grant said. "Crowley brought a signed agreement to the courthouse. The clerk accepted it before I could object." Nora stepped closer. "Is the signature real?" Caleb studied the bottom of the page. The name looked like his, but the letters were too smooth. "No, I did not sign this." Mr. Grant lowered his voice. "Then Crowley has made a serious mistake. We need proof before the sheriff arrives." Nora looked toward the dark window. "The original records from my claim are gone. His men could have taken them." "Crowley may have taken the papers from the office," Caleb said, "but he cannot erase everyone who saw them." Mr. Grant nodded. "The former land clerk lives outside Pine Hollow. His name is Walter Briggs. He retired last summer." Would he remember Nora? He might. He kept copies of important claims in a private record book. Caleb reached for his coat. "I will ride to him now." Nora blocked the doorway. "You have been riding for days. The roads are frozen and Crowley may have men waiting. If we do nothing, he takes both homes tomorrow. Then I am coming with you." Caleb looked toward Eli. Mr. Grant removed his hat. "I will stay with the boy." Nora knelt beside Eli. "We must go into town for a little while." Eli's face tightened. "You come back." Nora touched his cheek. "Yes, we will come back." The boy looked at Caleb. Both, Caleb promised. Caleb and Nora rode through the night. The frozen trail shone beneath the moon, and the wind pulled at their coats. Nora held the precious tin box beneath her cloak, even though it now contained only a few personal letters. They reached Walter Briggs's cabin shortly before dawn. The old man answered the door with a shotgun in his hands. He lowered it when Caleb gave his name. Walter had once been a strong man, but age had bent his back and weakened his legs. His memory remained sharp. He invited them inside and listened while Nora explained what had happened. "I remember your claim," Walter said. "You arrived wearing a blue dress and carrying a loaf of bread. You paid the filing fee with coins wrapped in cloth." Nora's eyes filled with hope. "Did you keep a copy?" Walter moved toward an old wooden chest. "I kept a record of every claim that seemed likely to cause trouble." He opened the chest and searched through several leather books. At last, he pulled out a thick ledger. He found Nora's name on a yellow page. The entry showed the date of her filing, the location of the spring, and the official number given to her claim. Nora covered her mouth. "This proves it." "It proves more than that," Walter said. "Crowley filed his railway purchase 3 months after you claimed the land." Caleb leaned closer. "Will you come to Pine Hollow and tell the sheriff?" Walter closed the ledger. "I will do better. I will tell the judge." They returned to town with Walter riding in a small wagon behind them. Morning light had begun to spread over Pine Hollow when they reached the courthouse. Several people already stood outside. Crowley waited beside the sheriff. His 2 hired men stood near him. When Crowley saw Walter Briggs, his confident smile disappeared. "What is this?" Crowley demanded. "The truth," Nora said. Walter carried the ledger into the courthouse. Judge Samuel Reed arrived soon afterward. He listened to Walter's statement and compared the dates in the ledger with Crowley's railway papers. Then Caleb placed the false debt notice on the table. "I did not sign this." Judge Reed examined the paper. Mr. Grant stepped forward. "I have handled Caleb Mercer's business accounts for 10 years. That is not his signature." Crowley's face turned red. "This is a waste of time. The ranch debt is legal." A quiet voice came from the back of the room. "No, it is not." A thin young man entered the courthouse. He wore a brown coat and carried a leather case. Crowley turned. "You were told to leave town." The young man swallowed hard but kept walking. "My name is Daniel Webb," he told the judge. "I worked as Mr. Crowley's bookkeeper." He opened the case and placed several documents on the table. "Mr. Crowley ordered me to copy Mr. Mercer's signature from a cattle receipt. He also paid a worker at the land office to remove Miss Hale's original claim." The room filled with angry whispers. Crowley stepped toward Daniel. "You lying coward." The sheriff moved between them. "Stay where you are." Daniel showed the judge Crowley's account book. It listed payments to the land worker and to the 2 hired men. Judge Reed's expression hardened. "Everett Crowley, you are under arrest for fraud, theft of public records, and attempted seizure of private property." Crowley reached beneath his coat. Caleb moved at once. He struck Crowley's wrist before the weapon cleared the cloth. The revolver fell to the floor. The sheriff pushed Crowley against the table and locked iron cuffs around his hands. Crowley stared at Caleb with hatred. "This is not finished." Caleb looked at him calmly. "It is finished for you." By noon, Nora's land claim had been restored. The false debt against the Mercer ranch was destroyed. The land worker confessed before sunset. Caleb expected Nora to return to her dugout at once. Instead, she stood on the courthouse steps and looked toward the road leading back to the ranch. "You won," Caleb said. "We won. You can go home now." Nora looked at him. "I am not sure which place I call home anymore." Caleb's heart began to beat harder. He wanted to ask her to stay, but he remembered her fear of losing her freedom. "You do not owe me anything," he said. "Your room at the ranch will remain yours as long as you need it. The key will stay in your hand." Nora smiled gently. "That is why I am not afraid to return with you." The winter passed slowly. Nora continued baking bread for Mr. Grant's store, but she did it in the Mercer kitchen. Every Thursday, Caleb carried the baskets into Pine Hollow. Eli grew stronger. He ate well, learned his letters, and began speaking without fear. Some evenings, he laughed so loudly that Caleb could hear him from the barn. Nora never tried to replace Margaret. She kept Margaret's picture near the hearth and encouraged Eli to speak about his mother. One night, Eli asked Nora a question while they shaped dough. "Can a boy have 2 mothers?" Nora's hands became still. "A heart can love someone who is gone and someone who is here," she said. "Loving one does not take love away from the other." Eli thought about her words. Then he wrapped his arms around her waist. Caleb saw them from the doorway. That was the moment he knew he could no longer hide what was in his heart. In early spring, he took Nora back to the dugout. The snow had melted and small green plants grew beside the hill. The door remained locked. Everything inside was exactly as she had left it. Nora touched the table where she had once baked alone. "This place saved me," she said. Caleb stood beside her. "And you saved us." She looked at him. Caleb removed his hat. "I cannot promise an easy life. Ranch work is hard, and I am not a man with beautiful words. But I can promise that your choices will always be yours. Your bread, your land, and your name will remain your own." He took a small brass key from his pocket. It was the key to the Mercer house. "I do not want you to stay because you need shelter. I want you to stay because you are loved." Nora's eyes filled with tears. Caleb held out the key. "Will you marry me?" Nora took it. "Yes." They were married beneath a wide cottonwood tree beside the spring on Nora's land. Mr. Grant stood with Caleb, and Walter Briggs signed the marriage paper as a witness. Eli carried a small loaf of bread instead of flowers. After the ceremony, Nora divided her land into garden plots. She built a larger stone oven near the dugout and taught several widows from Pine Hollow how to bake bread for money. The place that had once hidden one frightened woman became a place where many women found work and safety. Years later, travelers still asked about the bread sold at Grant's general store. Caleb always gave the same answer. It was made by the woman who brought my son back to life. Then he would return to the ranch, where Eli's laughter filled the rooms and warm bread cooled beside the window. The house no longer felt empty. The dugout no longer felt lonely. And Nora never again had to hide inside the earth to feel safe.